I woke up feeling both excited and anxious, getting ready for the most important day of my life. But when I looked at my phone, a message from my future mother in law, Jessica, left me stunned. We've canceled the outfits and the venue, and Lucas believes this is the right decision. It felt like my heart stopped. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I panicked, not understanding what was happening, and had a terrible feeling something worse was coming. The relationship between Jessica, my future mother in law, and me had been tense from the very first time we met. I remember clearly the first time I visited Lucas's family. When I walked into their house, she gave me a fake smile and reached out her hand to greet me. "Hello, dear, nice to meet you," she said, but her eyes couldn't hide the judgment. I could feel clearly that she wasn't pleased with my presence, and the indifference in her gaze made me feel out of place. But when Lucas was around, everything was different. She acted gentle, polite. Sometimes I even felt like I was an important part of their family. But the moment it was just me and her attitude shifted instantly. Whenever we were alone without Lucas, every word she said was sharp and challenging. "You're planning to choose that wedding dress?" Jessica asked, her tone as if I had picked something cheap. "It doesn't fit the image you should have on such an important day." I could feel the contempt in every word she spoke, as if everything I chose was wrong, never good enough. "But that's the dress I like," I tried to explain. "It's simple, elegant, and suits my style." "Style?" She scoffed. "Do you really think a simple bride is the best way to make an impression? This wedding should be an event, not a regular family gathering." Every time I made a decision about the wedding, she would insert her opinion. "The invitation doesn't look good. Try this one," she said, handing me a flashy, overly colorful card. I didn't want it, but I didn't dare resist. And the conversations just kept going. "The flower colors? No, you can't pick that. It's too pale. Red flowers will make everything pop." Her words cut through all the freedom I had hoped for. Everything about this wedding had been changed by her. None of the decisions felt like mine anymore. I remember one time, I tried to push back. "Jessica, I chose white flowers for the wedding." "That was my idea," I said firmly. "I want this wedding to be mine, not anyone else's." She looked down at me, her eyes cold. "What are you saying? This isn't just your wedding. It belongs to the entire family. And I have a say. Don't forget that." Moments like that made me feel like a bride forced into a supporting role where everything I wanted was ignored. I had hoped Lucas would take my side, protect me from his mother's constant criticism. But every time conflict arose, he always sided with her. "She just wants what's best for us," Lucas said one time when I tried to tell him his mother was being overly controlling. "She just wants everything to be perfect, so our wedding will be truly special." "What's best for us?" I repeated, disappointment rising in my chest. "Don't you see she's ruining everything? This is our wedding, not hers." "You're being too sensitive." Lucas shook his head, not even looking at me. "I don't want to talk about this anymore." His explanations eventually became repetitive and detached. Every time I brought it up, he avoided the conversation, refused to face the issue. Sometimes I felt like I was living in a loveless marriage, one built only on compromise and surrender. I began to feel truly alone, not because I lacked Lucas's love, but because he chose to side with his mother instead of me, the woman he claimed to love. "Can you stand by me just once?" I asked him late one evening as we sat on the sofa, the dim light from the table lamp casting a soft glow over his face, making him look as though he was hesitating. He sighed, eyes distant. "I don't know what to do anymore," he said, his voice a little weary. "My mother is the most important person in my life. You have to understand that." I could only stay silent, the emptiness swelling in my chest. Nothing had changed, and I felt like a stranger in what was supposed to be a relationship built on love. Then the wedding day finally arrived. I woke up early, filled with excitement and nervousness. It was hard to believe that today I would become Lucas's wife, the man I had loved for so long. I looked at the clock on the wall. Just a few more hours until it was time for hair and makeup. Then the ceremony I had been looking forward to. Everything was ready, from the pristine white wedding dress to the carefully chosen venue. It was all perfect. I pulled the blanket off, got out of bed, and grabbed my phone to check my messages. I felt something odd when I didn't see any congratulatory texts from Lucas or anyone in the family. There was only one message from Jessica, my future mother in law. Something felt off, and I opened the message with a growing sense of dread. The words on the screen left me frozen. We've canceled the outfits and the venue, and Lucas believes this is the right decision. My vision blurred, and I had to read the message again. I couldn't believe my eyes. Canceled? I whispered, my voice choked. Canceled what? Why? This is supposed to be the biggest day of my life. It felt like my heart shattered. A wave of panic rushed over me. I couldn't understand what was going on. Months of preparing for this wedding, all the effort and hope, now it all seemed to vanish in an instant. A cold, heartless blow from someone I thought was part of my new family. Lucas. He didn't say anything. I quickly dialed Lucas's number, but he didn't answer. My heart pounded faster. Anxiety wrapped tightly around me. I rushed out of the house, determined to find him and get the truth. On the way, thoughts raced through my head. Why would they cancel? Everything was ready. Why would they do this? Why didn't anyone tell me anything? It felt like I was trapped in a nightmare, everything around me growing darker. I couldn't believe the man I was about to marry could put me in this situation. When I arrived at the wedding venue, something felt terribly wrong. Everything around me seemed unfamiliar, like I had stepped into a place that didn't belong to me anymore. Then I saw Jessica standing there, her face smug, as if she had been waiting for this moment. I walked toward her quickly, no longer able to hold back my emotions. Jessica, I called out, my voice trembling. What's going on? Why was everything canceled? Why didn't anyone tell me? She looked at me with a tight smile, but her eyes were cold and challenging. We thought this was the right decision. Lucas said he didn't feel comfortable with what you had chosen. I just wanted everything to be perfect. Perfect? I shouted, unable to contain my anger. What are you talking about? This is my wedding, not yours or Lucas's alone. Every decision should include me. Jessica remained unfazed, her indifferent gaze making me feel like my words meant nothing. Sweetheart, this wedding isn't just yours. It belongs to the whole family. Lucas is my son, and I just want to protect my child. Please understand. My heart tightened, and a deep wave of disappointment surged inside me. Where is Lucas? Where is he? Didn't he say anything? I asked, my voice shaking. She shrugged. He'll be here soon. But don't expect too much. The decision has already been made. With just a sliver of hope left, I looked toward the entrance, praying to see Lucas walk in, but he didn't show up. At that moment, everything became painfully clear. This wedding wasn't what I thought it was. Everything, from the dress to the smallest details, felt like a play I had been tricked into. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Suddenly, I saw Clara, my best friend, standing nearby, wearing the wedding dress I had carefully chosen. She was standing next to Lucas. Their eyes met with joy, as if nothing was wrong. It felt like someone had punched me in the face. Clara, my best friend, the person I trusted most, was the one betraying me. Lucas stood there, showing no guilt at all, just looked at me with cold eyes, as if I were never the one he loved. Clara? I couldn't say anything more than her name, my eyes filled with tears. You. How could you do this to me? She looked at me with a mocking smile, as if there was nothing wrong. Sorry, but this is the choice I made. Everything has been decided, hasn't it? Those words cut through the last of the trust I had left. No more Lucas. No more Clara. I had been betrayed by the very people I once loved and trusted the most. That was when I realized this wasn't some unexpected accident. It was a plan carefully crafted. A plan I was never meant to know. Clara and I had been through so many memories together, from our college days, weekend gatherings, to times when I struggled in life. She was always the one by my side, listening and sharing. And at that time, I believed Clara would be my biggest supporter in this relationship. However, ever since Clara met Lucas for the first time, I began to sense a change in her. At first, I didn't think much of it, but over time, the strange signs became more obvious. She always had a peculiar look whenever Lucas spoke to me. Sometimes it was an intense focus that couldn't be ignored. as if she were analyzing every word he said. Whenever we were together, Clara didn't just pay attention to me, she would frequently glance at Lucas, as if she were trying to discover something I didn't see. Once, we hosted a small gathering at home, just me, Lucas, and a few other friends. Throughout the evening, Clara kept trying to sit close to Lucas. When Lucas joked around with everyone, Clara laughed too, but her eyes lingered on him longer than what felt normal. Her actions started making me uncomfortable, but I tried to brush it off, thinking I was just overthinking. Then one night, when we were out to dinner together, Clara did something I couldn't understand. Lucas and I were chatting happily, discussing a movie we had just seen. Out of nowhere, Clara cut in and asked, "Lucas, do you remember when you and I went to see this movie together?" She didn't just mention it once. She emphasized every memory they supposedly shared without me. It felt like I was standing outside my own relationship, like Clara was trying to infiltrate the world between Lucas and me, doing everything she could to carve out a space for herself. She began telling stories of going out with Lucas without me, always smiling cryptically while saying it. Though she never said it outright, I could feel the competition in her eyes, as if she were trying to win him over to take his attention. I remember one time when we were with a group of friends, Clara suddenly said to Lucas, "You know, you always make me feel cared for. That's why I always feel so special around you." I was sitting right there, hearing every word, and it felt like I was being pushed aside. Lucas looked at Clara with surprise, seemingly unaware of how inappropriate her comment was, but I couldn't ignore it. The feeling of being pushed away, of being deceived, slowly took over me. One day, I decided to test Clara, to see what she would do if I wasn't around. When I was absent, a friend told me Clara had invited Lucas out for dinner, without even mentioning it to me. That's when I realized all of Clara's behavior changes hadn't been random. She had slowly been pulling me away from Lucas, and neither of us had noticed. Whenever I brought up Clara to Lucas, he always said she was a great friend. But I felt that there was a connection between them I could no longer control. It wasn't just closeness. It was a quiet waiting for an opportunity to form a special bond, to remove me from the man I loved. I stood there, among the cheerful laughter of the crowd, like a ghost. No one even recognized who I was. The familiar faces I once knew, the people I thought were my friends, now didn't care at all about my presence. They continued talking, enjoying the wedding, as if I never existed. I was just an invisible figure to them, an extra in this event, with no place of my own. Clara stood next to Lucas, flashing a proud smile. She showed no sign of remorse. Her eyes were filled with defiance, as if I were the pathetic one, the loser left behind. She laughed freely, savoring every moment, unaware of how deeply she was wounding my self-respect. The feeling of betrayal surged within me, but I wouldn't let it take control. I knew that if I just stood there in silence, enduring it, I would never escape the control they had imposed on me. Jessica sat on a chair, one hand resting on the armrest, staring straight at me. Her face bore no emotion other than satisfaction. She was enjoying the perfect play, as if everything had been scripted all along. She had no intention of stopping, no plan to end the power game she had created. Every look she gave me felt like a sharp blade piercing through my chest. But I couldn't stay silent. I couldn't let these people keep playing with my life. Part of me wanted to turn around and run away, but I knew I couldn't. This was the moment I had to stand up. I walked toward Jessica, each step slow and steady. All the sounds around me seemed to disappear. Every eye turned to me. The entire room felt frozen, and it was just me and Jessica, facing each other in tense silence. When I stood in front of her, I didn't tremble, not even a hint of fear. I looked her straight in the eye and said clearly, word by word, "I am not the loser here. The ones who lose are the traitors, the ones who have no character." My voice rang out, not weak, but firm and powerful. I didn't cry. Not a single tear fell. I didn't beg. I didn't ask for forgiveness, because I had nothing to be sorry for. I simply declared that from this moment forward, none of them had any power over me. The entire room stayed silent, as if waiting for Jessica's response, but she said nothing. Her expression didn't change. Yet I could see it clearly. She was trying to stay composed, but her eyes revealed the confusion and panic she couldn't hide. I looked around and no longer saw patience or sympathy from anyone. But I didn't care what they thought of me anymore. I had stood up, I had spoken my truth, and I didn't owe anyone an explanation. I wasn't the failure in this story. The people sitting there mocking me, they were the real losers. Long before the truth exploded at this wedding, I had suspected there was something going on between Lucas and Clara. At first, it was just subtle changes in their behavior, those cryptic glances they exchanged that I couldn't make sense of. But then, the suspicion began to gnaw at me little by little, until I couldn't ignore it any longer. I remember once, when Lucas and I were having dinner together, Clara called him right while we were sitting across from each other. Lucas didn't pick up, but I saw the uneasy look in his eyes as he glanced at the screen, like he didn't want me to know about the call. Then, he quickly silenced his phone and slipped it into his pocket. I felt something wasn't right, but Lucas said it was just a work call. I wanted to believe him, because I had always trusted him unconditionally. But deep inside, unease began to grow. After that, whenever I wasn't around, I noticed Clara and Lucas having private conversations, exchanging sneaky looks I couldn't ignore. I started collecting small pieces of evidence, trying to stay silent and avoid confrontation, because I didn't want to damage our relationship. But the signs became too obvious, and I knew I had to act. Once, when Lucas went on a business trip, I decided to check his phone secretly. I didn't want to, but I felt like I had no other choice. I went through his messages and found long conversations between him and Clara. It felt like someone had stabbed me in the heart. These were not the texts of two friends. They were sweet, suggestive messages no real friend would send. Clara called him my love in the messages, and he replied with the same kind of words. Not only texts, I also discovered several calls between Lucas and Clara during times I wasn't around. One time, I secretly recorded their phone call. In the recording, I heard Clara confessing to Lucas that she couldn't stop thinking about him and that she wished the two of them could start a new life together. It was like a nightmare playing out before my eyes. I felt like I was living in an unreal world where the people I loved the most were betraying me so cruelly and without shame. But in that moment, I knew what I had to do. I couldn't go on living in lies and unanswered doubts. I decided to gather every piece of evidence I could, recordings, texts, even photos Clara had secretly taken of my wedding dress. Once I had enough, I had no choice but to confront them. I couldn't live in the shadows of betrayal any longer. And that is why, when I stood in the middle of the wedding ceremony, I pulled out my phone and projected everything I had gathered onto the big screen, without hesitation, without fear. Everything was exposed. There was no more hiding. I stood there among the crowd, my hands trembling, but without hesitation. Every breath I took felt like a blow to my dignity. The light from my phone screen lit up my face, making the storm of emotions inside me clearer than ever. This wasn't just a wedding ceremony. It was the defining moment of my life, where I had to confront everything that had been buried for so long. I said nothing more. I simply unlocked my phone and began scrolling through the album I had prepared, photos and messages that left no room for denial. One by one, the evidence appeared. Clara secretly photographing my wedding dress, messages exchanged between her and Lucas. But that wasn't all. I played a recording, Lucas, in his own voice, admitting to his secret relationship with Clara. No excuses. No explanations. Everything was laid bare. The glow of the screen lit my face, and with it, I felt a surge of strength. A murmur spread through the room. The confused glances of the guests shifted from one to another. No one said a word, but everyone now realized things were not as they had seemed. The atmosphere grew heavy, the air still and stifling. Some guests quietly slipped out, unable to endure the painful truth. Lucas stood frozen, unable to look at me. His face pale, his lips pressed tightly together as if he wanted to say something, but nothing came out. His eyes were no longer confident, only filled with shame and fear. I met his gaze without pity. He stood there, helpless before the truth he had tried so hard to hide. Clara stood beside Lucas, but she couldn't look at me. Her eyes wide, unsure how to respond. She stood still, silent like a statue. I looked at her, and there was no pity left in me. She had betrayed me, and now she was caught in the very trap she had created. Jessica, Lucas's mother, sat in her chair, trying to maintain her composure, but I saw the confusion clearly in her eyes. Her fingers nervously fidgeted with her handkerchief, yet she said nothing, no protest, no denial. She remained externally calm, but inside, I could sense the storm brewing. She hadn't expected everything to collapse so swiftly. Her pride, her arrogance, worthless now. The silence was so deep, I could hear my own breathing. I didn't stop. My eyes stayed on the big screen, where the evidence was displayed for all to see. Each photo, each voice recording, was an accusation that couldn't be denied. Every image crisp, every sound sharp, cutting into the minds of those who had hurt me. Some in the crowd left, shaking their heads, unable to take the weight of the truth. Others looked at me with pity, but I didn't want their pity. I didn't need it anymore. I raised my head and looked directly into the lens of the camera live streaming the event, capturing every second of my moment. One deep breath, a wave of calm returned to me. And then I spoke, my voice clear, unwavering, as if I had rehearsed it my entire life. Thank you for inviting me to my own wedding. But I'm sorry, I didn't come to give my blessings. I came to say goodbye. The room stood still. No sound, just breathless silence. The crowd froze, some with eyes wide open, others bowed their heads, unable to meet my gaze. Every eye was on me, and I felt like I was standing in the middle of a storm. But I wasn't afraid. I was ready. I turned around and walked through the crowd, my head held high. Each step echoed with strength, without the slightest hesitation. Every step I took was a slap to the faces of those who had betrayed me, those who thought I would bow down and accept my fate. Now, they were watching me walk away with pride, not a single tear, not a trace of regret. I was no longer the deceived bride, no longer the woman who endured betrayal. I was a survivor of brutal betrayal, and I had taken back control of my life. Each powerful stride I took said one thing: I had nothing left to lose. I didn't look back. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. A life without the people who once hurt me. A life where I would be the one who decides, the one in control. The betrayers had lost everything. But me? I had found freedom. As I stepped out of the wedding hall, the tension inside me seemed to melt away. Instead of anger, I felt a strange sense of peace, as if everything had resolved itself perfectly. No more worries, no more lies, no more betrayal. All the negative emotions slipped off my shoulders like a heavy shell I had carried for far too long. I didn't have to live in this nightmare anymore. I left the city soon after, without leaving a trace behind. The feeling of freedom was something I had never truly understood until now. No more Lucas, no more Jessica, no more Clara. I didn't have to face them anymore, didn't have to endure their deceit or their power games. I no longer had to exist in a world built on manipulation and betrayal. In those first days, I felt no fear, no confusion. I began to find myself again, to live a life no longer controlled by anyone else. I spent time on things I had once forgotten: reading, traveling, meeting new people. I was no longer the deceived bride. I was an independent woman, strong and fully in control of her own life. Meanwhile, everything around Lucas began to collapse. His wedding with Clara was entirely called off. The people who once praised him no longer even wanted to say his name. His reputation was crushed in the eyes of everyone. His job suffered as well. The calls from his superiors and partners gradually stopped, and no new opportunities came his way. Everything he had built crumbled because of one terrible decision, and a betrayal he couldn't undo. Jessica didn't escape the consequences either. Her entire family turned their backs on her. No one trusted her anymore. Old friends and relatives distanced themselves, unable to accept the way she had behaved. She lost all the respect and influence she once held. The people who used to stand by her now looked at her only with disappointment and contempt. Jessica was no longer the perfect mother-in-law I once believed she was, but a lonely woman left behind in the ruins of her own arrogance. I didn't need revenge because the truth was enough. What happened to them wasn't something I orchestrated. All I did was step out of the nightmare and begin living the life I had always deserved. Sometimes, revenge isn't about what we do to those who betrayed us. It's about how we rise above them, live better, freer, and happier without letting them haunt us anymore. I began a new chapter in my life, filled with new hopes, new opportunities. I was no longer chained to the past, but looked ahead with the belief that life would go on, and that I would be the one in control. The pain, the heartbreak, it all became a part of the past I never wanted to return to. I had learned how to rise, and now I would live the life I deserved. Stronger than ever, freer than ever,